So in a previous episode, we added devise for authentication. In this episode, I want to show how you can restrict access to certain resources, because as it is right now, anyone who logs in is able to see all of the videos from any other, like most recently authenticated user. And so the next step that we want to take is to make it so that when you connect to YouTube, that session, that YouTube session is somehow related to the user who is authenticated, and then make sure that only the videos for that authenticated YouTube session are related to that user, etc. So I think initially we can just keep it to one channel. So like when you have one login, one user is related exactly to one YouTube channel. And then we only show the videos for each YouTube channel. I think that's okay to start. We're not going to have teams. We're just going to have one, just like one login, and then you authenticate to YouTube, and that is just connected directly to your user account. And so if we recall, we created this user model, but we didn't actually associate it with any YouTube sessions yet. So we have YouTube session.last. So we have a YouTube session model, and that has like the client secret and the client ID and all of that. And this is how you authenticate to YouTube, is with the credentials from a YouTube session. But this doesn't actually relate at all to a user. So the first thing we want to do probably is, the way that I have this set up is you can create multiple YouTube sessions for the same channel. I think what we want to do is make it so that once you connect, your YouTube channel ID is on the user model. And I can't remember if we have the YouTube's, I don't think we even have the YouTube. So we want to relate every single YouTube session to an individual user. But I'm trying to figure out, how do we limit those users to only one channel? And I think the way we might want to do this is just store the channel ID on the user model the very first time they authenticate. And then from there forward, we can just check to make sure that when they're authenticating, that we only associate the YouTube session to the user if it's the same channel. So on the user model, we need to add a YouTube channel ID. And then on each YouTube session, we need to add a user ID. So let's do something like this. So we'll say Rails G migration. We'll add YouTube channel ID to users, YouTube channel ID. And that'll just be a string value for the channel ID. And then we're going to say Rails G migration add user ID to YouTube sessions, and that's actually going to be user references, because we want that to be a foreign key to the user model. So let's go to add YouTube channel ID to users first to make sure this came out all right. It did. It is nullable. Because initially, when someone first signs up, they don't actually have a channel ID set yet, and so we're just going to say this is nullable, and that's totally fine. And then the next one here is the adding the user ID. Let's make sure this added correctly. So add reference, YouTube sessions, user. It can't be null, and it is a foreign key. So yeah, let's make it so that it can't be null. I think that's safe. Okay, so rake db migrate. Now we need to like actually make sure that the associations are set up for these. Right, so because we're adding a non-nullable foreign key field, then we need to make sure that we drop the database, rake db drop, db create, db migrate. Okay, so that's going to drop the whole database, and that's okay. And then the next thing we want to do is just go to the user model and make sure that this thing has many YouTube sessions. And okay, and then we want to go to YouTube sessions, YouTube sessions, YouTube session.rb, and this is going to say something like belongs to user. And then we need to add some sort of validation so that when we're creating YouTube sessions, we're not creating them for channels that are not the same as the one that we're authenticating to. But when I was looking at those credentials, I didn't actually see the channel ID. So like if we look at, let's actually say, let's annotate the model so we can see the columns. And then if we open up YouTube session, right, like this credentials JSON blob, I don't think this has the channel ID. So let's just go check that out. So, oh, we deleted it. So we need to restart the server. And because we just added all of these associations, I think when we first create the user, that should be fine. It's when we go to create the session, this is where things are going to change a little bit, because instead of just creating the session like so, we need to create it and pass in the current user so that we're only creating YouTube sessions for the current user. So let's take a look. So we're going to need to sign up. So we're going to click sign up, jennyrosenetexample.com, password, and then click sign up. Okay, so we've successfully signed up. Now when we click this YouTube button, we're gonna authenticate to YouTube, but when we come back from the authentication process, we will have the access token and the client secret. But what I want to see is, like, is there a way to get the channel ID from this auth client? So let's see. Let's just for now, before when we get back to this callback, we should be logged in, so we should be authenticated as the current user. So I believe we should have current user, and that has YouTube sessions. It has a YouTube sessions association, so the user model, right? This here has the YouTube sessions association. So instead of creating with a bang directly on the class name, I'm going to update it so that we're using the association to create here. And we're just going to pass in the same thing. So we're going to pass in credentials. And the other thing that we want to do is we want to say, like, if current user.youtube channel ID is blank, then we want to update the current user to have current user.youtube or .update YouTube channel ID to some channel ID. And we need to figure out where we're going to get this channel ID from. So I think I actually want to, how do we want to inspect this? We could just like add a breakpoint here with bybug so that we break in this controller action when we get back to the callback to try to see if the auth client or if anything else that's at this point will give us the channel ID. Otherwise, channel ID is just going to be nil. Okay, so let's go through the authentication flow. We're going to connect to YouTube, and we're going to say, yep, authenticate this channel, pick myself, and when we are redirected back to localhost 3000, so we should be broken. Okay, here we are. So auth client dot methods dot sort minus class dot new dot methods dot sort, and then we'll use puts so that it's a little bit cleaner. Oh, interesting, person. I wonder what that's about. And okay, so we've got the access token, additional parameters. Let's see what that is. Auth client dot additional parameters. Nope. Okay. Auth client dot person. Nope. But it doesn't actually give us anything about the token. Okay, so I think we're going to have to fetch the channel ID using something like fetch myself, or like, you know, like what is the identity function once we get this callback. We go to references, channels, list my channel. So then, okay, so how does this work? Retrieves the channel data for the authorized user's YouTube channel. It uses the mine request parameter. Okay, so I think this, yeah, all right. So I think what we're gonna need to do is, oh, this is tricky because our YouTube service here takes in a session and then uses that session's credentials in order to do this. So what we need to do is we need to first initialize a new instance of a session. So we're going to say YouTube session.new, and we're going to pass in credentials. We're just going to pass in this here. So we're going to build an instance, an in-memory instance of a YouTube session. Temp session equals this. And what we're going to do is we're going to pass that into a new YouTube service. So we're going to initialize a new YouTube service. So YouTube is youtube.new temp session. And we're going to use that YouTube service to fetch or to list the channels for this session. And there should only be one that matches mine. So y.fetch channel. And this should be my channel. Or like user's channel or something. And fetch channel, I don't think we need to pass anything in there. So let's see. Fetch channel is going to be something like service.list channel or channels or something. And then there's going to be some part, and then there's going to be this authorization block. And so we need to go figure out what the list channel thing, or where this argument goes. So mine, I believe, is a filter. Okay, so it's the filter, and then the part, we only really need the ID. So I think we can just pass ID for the part, and then in terms of the filter, let's go look at the YouTube gem, Ruby gem, YouTube. It's like github.com, YouTube. This one. Okay, so I think this is the file we care about. List channels. Nope, not the one we care about. Let's see. Can I not search this? Oh, here it is. Whoa, interesting. Oh, that moved around on me. Okay, YouTube or list channels. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, list channels. Okay, so we give it the part, the category ID for username. Mine is true. So here just said mine, true, I think. And that should fetch our own channel. It returns a list of list channel responses. So I'm guessing this is like channels. And we just want to return like channels.first or something. So let's just drop in another debugger there to see if we can actually make this happen. So we'll go back to localhost and restart our server. Okay, we click connect to YouTube. Go through the flow. And we should be broken here. Okay, so channels. It did return one channel, so channels.first. No, channels. So channels, how do we get at the actual channels? Channels.items.first. Okay, it looks like that is what actually returns the channel. Channels.items.first should give us back the channel. And then I think, yeah, .id should give us the channel ID. And just to double check, I think we can go like youtube.com/c/ and then paste in the channel ID. Oh, no, okay. youtube.com/channel/the ID. Boom, okay, so that does drop us into the right channel. So here we would just say, users channel, users channel.id. So that should update the channel ID on the user. And then instead of calling create down here, we want to set temp session.user.id is equal to current user.id. And then we want to actually save that in the database. So I think, yeah, so here, if this doesn't work for some reason, if we don't use the bang, then I think it's going to fail silently. And similarly, if we say temp session.save bang here, that should fail with a big error. And that's fine for now. All right, so let's do this. Let's refresh this page. We got to like go through the whole flow again. So we click connect to YouTube, sign in with our stuff. And now let's take a look at the database. Rails C, user.count. We should only have one, user.last. Okay, so it has a YouTube channel ID, right? And we can say user.last.youtube sessions, and that has a YouTube session, which has the user ID correctly. It actually has several sessions in here, but the most recent one should be the correct one. And then the other thing we need to do is say like if it does have a channel ID, then we want to say else if the current user.youtube channel ID does not equal, if it doesn't equal the user's channel.id, then we want to do nothing. Then we want to just say like render, or like yeah, so we should probably say like flash.now or flash.errors, flash errors is equal to like a list of strings where it just has one string with the error message we want to display, saying something like unable to connect to different, like to an unknown channel with ID. Okay. Users channel.id. Okay. Otherwise, we'll just save. Yeah, so if I tried now to connect to YouTube with a different channel, like say this old Wise Minute channel. Oh, cool. All right, so because I've only allowed one user, then it only actually works with one user anyway, so that's fine. But yeah, okay. And we can still connect with the same channel, so that's all cool. All right, so I think this is great. This is looking good, and I'm pretty happy with how this is working, at least to limit the session, the YouTube session, to the correct user. Now, the next thing we want to do is our videos do not actually have any relation to a user or a YouTube session or a channel or anything. And so what I want to do is make a video belong to a user. So let's do that now. So we'll generate a new migration, Rails G migration, add user ID to videos, and then we'll say user references. And that looks good. Okay. Rake db migrate. Annotate. I think there's a way to set it up so that when you run a migration, it runs this annotation for you automatically. But when in the past, I've had an experience where it changed from one version to another. Yeah, your mileage may vary. Belongs to user, and then a user has many videos. Okay, and then we have a rake task for fetching videos. Instead of just calling video.create, we need to actually call video dot, or like, okay, so instead of just passing in YouTube session.last here and just like assuming there's only one user, we actually need to iterate over like all the users and fetch their most recent YouTube session, and then fetch their videos. So user.all.each do user. Okay, and then for each user, we have potentially a YouTube session. So user.youtube_sessions.last. So that'll give us a new YouTube thing, and then we'll fetch videos. And when we're saving those videos, we can say video.create or user.videos.create, and then it should create all of this stuff. And then the other thing is that, like, instead of category.first and description template.last, we need these also to be related directly to a user. So let's go do category and description template. So Rail, like, it's basically the same thing, but we need it for categories and description templates. Let's see, description templates. Migrate again, and then we'll annotate again. And then we want to open our task back up. And instead of category.first, we want to have like user.categories.first, and description template is going to be user.description templates.last. And we need to go add those associations. So on the user model, this needs to have has many categories, has many description templates, and category belongs to a user, and a description template also belongs to a user. Okay, so back to our task. Here we can say, okay, so that actually looks pretty good. Rather than fetching the category.first and description template.last, I'm going to make one tiny modification here, because these are going to fire database queries if it's not cached, I think. So I'm just going to, instead of doing it for every single video, I'm just going to pull them out up here and just say like category is user.categories.first, and template is user.description templates.last, just so that we don't have to like look them up every time. And this is template. Okay. All right, so I think this should create the videos in categories and such. I actually don't think we have any templates. Yeah, we don't have any description templates, and we don't have any categories. So let's go to the description templates controller. And so here, instead of the index being all description templates, this should be like current user.description templates.all. And then here, when we create the description template, we'll say current user.description templates.new. So basically, like anywhere that we used to have just like the class name defined, we want to like associate these with a current user. Okay. So we'll do that change in a couple different places here, and that should work fine. I don't think we need it for new, but sure, we can do it for new also. All right, so then we also need to do the same thing for categories here. So we want to say like current user.categories.all. Same thing for new, and create, and edit, and update. Cool. So yeah, like for example, if you try to edit a category and look it up by ID when it's not your user, then you should just like get a 404. So this find method should result in a 404 if it's not for you. So the other thing I wanted to do was, right now we don't have a template or like a link at the top to go to categories. So let's go to our application HTML ARB and just add a quick link here for categories. We need to also do presenters. All right, so let's see, let's make our migration to presenters. All right. presenter now belongs to a user, and a user has many presenters. Okay, presenters controller is going to say current user.presenters.all. Okay, all right, pretty simple stuff. All right, so now rake db migrate, and then we'll also annotate. Okay, so we should be able to add a description template that's like default, and it has like presenters dot, oh, let's see, summary, whatever, and then we'll just save something like that. Okay, so now we have a description template. Let's sign out and then sign up as a different user. So Jenny Rosen 2, and we'll make the password. Okay, so now if we go to templates, we don't see any templates because that's not for us. That's not for our user, right? So if we added a new template here and we called it like template 2, and we just say testing, then, and we create this template 2. If we edit, we notice that the ID of that second template is 2, right? And now if we sign out and sign back in with password and click login, now we go to templates and we see that our template is template 1. If we try to go to template 2, it /edit, it should fail because that it couldn't find our description template with that ID. And I believe in production this would just throw a 404 page for record not found. So that's what we want to do. That's how we're like protecting access. It should work for templates. It should work for categories. Let's see, Ruby on Rails. The title color is that pink color, and then the other color is this bluish color, sure. And then if we have our presenters, we can add, you know, like CJ, CJav, dev. Yeah, I'd love for you to follow me on Twitter too. Hit me up. We could chat. And then, yeah, so that's our presenters. And then if we have our videos, we actually haven't fetched our videos. So we need to add, like, call this YouTube task. So the thing is that, like, if there are no YouTube sessions, we should probably user.youtube sessions blank empty. We want to just like skip it so that we don't end up trying to get the YouTube session when it's nil and then just having an error. So we're saying like if the user has never authenticated with YouTube, then skip. All right, and then, yeah, I don't know, let's give it a whirl. So rake YouTube fetch videos, and let's see what happens. So the second user should have no videos. Oh, look at that. Okay, cool. So the first user, so this is the user that has like the legit session, and then if we log back in as Jenny Rosen 2 with the password, then what? Okay, so there should not be any videos here. Did we not do it for the videos? Videos controller. Oh, we didn't. Okay, so good. This is great. We didn't actually current user.videos. We didn't do the authentication bit in the videos controller. So we do want to so we want to like scope everything in this controller also to the current user. Current user.presenters.all, current user.categories.all. Okay, so I saw a couple other things in here. So we need to go through this one a little bit more carefully since there is so much more to it. So in here we need current user.videos.find, and then instead of YouTube session.last, we want current user.youtube sessions.last. And I'm starting to notice a pattern where we're like fetching the current user and then we're passing in all of this stuff to get back an instance of YouTube. I think this is probably fine still, but I might make a helper method on current user to just say like current user.youtube service, and that would just return a new one of these with the correct session filled out. What's nice about that is if we change what the logic is and from being like the last session to being like the most recent successfully synced or updated session or something similar, then we don't have to like go and update all of these. But for now, I'm just going to keep it easy. Current user.youtube sessions.last, and we'll just keep rocking it like so. The other thing too is that like if we wanted to add a team in here, like some sort of concept of a team, we would need to go through and update all of these references. All right, so now if we refresh, we don't see any videos because we're signed in as someone who hasn't authenticated. If we go back to our user, our first user that has videos, then we log in, we can see the videos. Super cool. So now if we dive into one of these, we do see the description is being generated. Gosh, this is still so ugly. There's like default, right? The default fonts and stuff for the browser, but yeah, okay, so this is, we went through and we updated access to the correct, limiting access to the resources. We limited access to the resources. So the first thing, recall that the first thing we did was we went into the YouTube sessions controller and we updated this so that when we receive the callback as part of the OAuth flow, that we first fire up a temporary YouTube session with the credentials we received back from the authentication flow. We initialized a new service and fetched the channel so that we had the ID, the YouTube channel ID, and we could ensure that the current user was not switching between different YouTube channels. We then associated the currently logged in user with a given YouTube session, which allows us to have like a set of YouTube OAuth credentials for a given user. Then we went through and updated all of our resources, like the videos resource, for instance, so that they had a new column in the database called user_ID, which allowed us to build a foreign key reference and association between a video and a user, and also all of the other resources that are related to users, so categories, description templates, presenters, etc. These are all now related directly to users so that we can scope access to those resources directly to users. And then we went through all of the controllers, like the videos controller, and we updated the references here from being the full class name of video to now being scoped to retrieve the videos through the videos association on the current user. So again, the current user is a reference to the user that is authenticated using devise. And we have a video about how to set up devise authentication if you want to check that out. Otherwise, I think that is it for this episode. So thanks for watching. If you liked the video, if you want to hit that thumbs up, that'll help other people find this. I really appreciate everyone dropping comments. It sounds like some of these have been helpful for like boot camp, final projects and such. So love to hear that, love to see that. So if this is helpful for you, please let me know in the description. Also, if you have certain topics that you want covered, let me know and we can check those out. So this is what we have planned for the next few things. I want to set up a background job for using the refresh token to retrieve a new refreshed auth token for each of these YouTube sessions so that we don't have to like click the connect to YouTube button every single time. And then also I was thinking about setting up some webhooks from YouTube so that when a video is posted, we can do things like automating a tweet that goes out or automating a message in Slack. And then at some point, we got to get around to styling. So that's a wrap. Appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.